The holidays are supposed to be the safest, happiest time of year. Family gatherings, warm lights, and cozy nights by the fire. But behind the glow of Christmas trees and the sound of carols, some people spend those nights in fear. Because while you're distracted wrapping gifts or celebrating with loved ones, there are others watching, waiting for the perfect chance to get inside. These aren't stories about legends or made-up monsters. These are true accounts of people who lived through holiday home invasions, and they serve as a chilling reminder that danger doesn't take time off for Christmas. Tonight, we're going to look at 3 real, creepy holiday home invasion stories that will make you think twice the next time you hear a sound in your house after dark. This first story took place on Christmas Eve of 2017. I was 17 years old at the time, living with my parents and younger sister in a quiet suburban neighborhood. It was one of those neighborhoods where people left Christmas lights glowing all night, and every other house had inflatable Santas and reindeer in the yard. Ours was no different. We had just finished celebrating with relatives, eating too much food, exchanging gifts, and laughing until late. By the time everyone left, it was almost midnight. I remember retreating to my room, exhausted, but not tired enough to sleep. I laid in bed with my headphones in, scrolling through my phone. That's when I noticed something. Through the faint sound of music, I could hear the creak of a floorboard downstairs. At first, I didn't think much of it. My dad often got up for a late-night snack or glass of water. But after a few moments, I realized the sound wasn't just footsteps. It was slow, uneven, almost like someone was deliberately trying not to make noise. I pulled my headphones out and sat there in silence. That's when I heard it again. A soft, deliberate creak, followed by the faint clatter of something metallic. My heart started racing. I carefully opened my bedroom door and peeked down the hallway. My parents' door was closed, and I could faintly hear my sister's TV playing some cartoon in her room, which meant none of them were downstairs. I quickly pulled out my phone and texted my dad. "Are you in the kitchen?" A few seconds later, I heard the vibration of a phone coming from their bedroom. My stomach dropped. Whoever was downstairs wasn't supposed to be there. At that point, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to scream, in case it made the intruder come upstairs. But I also didn't want to just sit there and wait. I quietly slipped into my sister's room and closed the door behind me. She looked confused until I told her to turn off her TV. The look on her face when I whispered that someone was in the house is something I'll never forget. For a few minutes, we sat frozen, listening. The noises downstairs got louder, drawers opening and shutting, the rustle of bags, the sound of something being dragged across the floor. Whoever it was, they weren't rushing. They were comfortable, like they thought we were all fast asleep. That was the scariest part, knowing someone was in our home, taking their time. I heard my dad's bed creak a few minutes later. He must have woken up from the vibration of my text. He cracked the bedroom door open and whispered my name. I opened my sister's door just enough to see him standing there in the dark, holding a baseball bat. His face was pale, but his grip was tight. The 3 of us stood there in silence, listening. Then we heard it. Slow, heavy footsteps moving toward the staircase. I'll never forget that sound. Each step seemed to echo louder than the last. Whoever it was, they were making their way up. My dad didn't wait. He suddenly yelled, his voice booming down the hallway. "I'm calling the police!" There was a pause, just long enough for us to hold our breath. Then the footsteps turned, fast. We heard them bolt back toward the kitchen. A few seconds later, the back door slammed open, and a rush of cold winter air swept inside. My dad ran downstairs, shouting, while I stayed with my sister. By the time he reached the kitchen, the intruder was gone. The police showed up within minutes, but it didn't matter. The person had vanished into the night. What still makes my skin crawl is what they left behind. On the counter was a half-filled trash bag stuffed with wrapped Christmas presents from under our tree. They had been quietly stealing our gifts while we were upstairs sleeping. The officers believed it was someone who had been watching the neighborhood, maybe even scoping out houses earlier in the evening while families were distracted. That night, none of us slept. We stayed huddled together in the living room, with every light on until the sun came up. And every Christmas since then, I can't help but think back to that night. The thought of waking up to a stranger carrying our gifts out the back door, and the terrifying possibility that if I hadn't stayed awake on my phone, they might have made it upstairs. This next story happened to a woman named Kelly in 2019. It was a few days before Christmas, and she was home alone in the evening wrapping presents. She lived in a 2-story house in a quiet town in Pennsylvania. Her husband worked nights, and her teenage kids were at a friend's holiday party. It was just her, some Christmas music playing softly in the background, and the glow of the tree lighting up the living room. Around 8 p.m., she heard a knock at the front door. When she looked through the peephole, she saw a man standing there holding a large gift bag, dressed in what looked like winter clothes and a red scarf. She assumed he was a neighbor or maybe a delivery person, since it wasn't uncommon for packages to be mixed up during the holidays. The man smiled and waved, holding up the bag as if to show her it was for her. She hesitated. Something about it felt a little off. But the sight of the gift and the man's friendly demeanor lowered her guard just enough. She opened the door, but left the screen door locked. The man said in a cheerful voice, "Package delivery, wrong address. This is for the house across the street, but I figured I'd check here first." Kelly apologized, saying it wasn't hers, and pointed him toward the neighbor's house. He nodded, still smiling, and slowly walked back down the driveway. At first, she thought nothing of it. But a few minutes later, when she returned to wrapping gifts, she noticed something strange. The man hadn't gone to the neighbor's house across the street. Instead, she saw him walking down the sidewalk, glancing back at her house more than once. She brushed it off as paranoia, but about half an hour later, she heard something else, this time at the side of the house. A faint rustling sound, followed by what she swore was the squeak of a window frame. Her stomach dropped. She muted the music and listened. For a moment, there was silence. Then she heard it again, metal scraping against wood. Someone was trying to force open the side window. She panicked and called her husband first, whispering into the phone. He immediately told her to hang up and call 911. As she dialed, she heard footsteps outside retreating quickly, like whoever it was had realized she was onto them. The police arrived within minutes and checked around the property. That's when they found fresh footprints in the snow leading from her front yard to the side of the house, right up to the window by the living room. The window screen had been partially cut open. When she described the man with the scarf, the officer told her this was a common trick around the holidays. Criminals disguise themselves as delivery people, carolers, or neighbors to see who's home. If they suspect you're alone or vulnerable, they'll return later to try to break in. Kelly later admitted that what scared her most wasn't just the attempted break-in. It was how normal the man had seemed when he smiled at her from the porch. He looked friendly, harmless, almost festive, with the red scarf and the gift bag. But in reality, he was casing her home, probably planning to come back once he thought she was asleep. That Christmas, Kelly and her family installed a camera system and new locks. She says she still replays the moment she almost opened the screen door, thinking she was just being neighborly. And she can't help but wonder what would have happened if she had actually let that man inside. The last story took place on New Year's Eve of 2015. A college student named Marcus decided to host a small get-together at his apartment to ring in the new year. He lived just outside a busy city, in a building mostly occupied by other students and young professionals. That night, there were about 10 people in his apartment. Music playing, cheap decorations hung up, drinks in hand. Everyone was in a good mood, waiting for the countdown to midnight. Around 11:30, there was a knock at the door. Marcus assumed it was one of his friends who had mentioned they might stop by late. He opened the door without checking the peephole, only to see a man he didn't recognize. The guy looked to be in his mid-30s, wearing a dark hoodie with a beanie pulled low. He gave a slight nod and said something like, "Heard there was a party." Marcus was caught off guard but laughed it off, figuring maybe one of his neighbors had told him about it. He didn't want to be rude, so he let the man inside. The stranger blended in at first, standing near the kitchen, grabbing a drink, not saying much. But Marcus noticed something odd. Whenever people laughed or talked loudly, the man didn't join in. He just stood there, scanning the room, watching everyone. As the countdown got closer, the party shifted toward the living room. Music was turned up, people cheered, and for a while Marcus forgot about the guy. But at exactly midnight, when everyone shouted and hugged, Marcus saw the man slip quietly out of the living room and down the hallway toward the bedrooms. Marcus followed, pretending like he was just going to grab something from his room. When he turned the corner, his heart sank. The man was in his roommate's room, rifling through drawers. Marcus froze, unsure what to say. But when the man looked up and saw him, the expression on his face instantly changed. Gone was the neutral look from earlier. It was replaced with something cold, something hostile. The man stepped toward him, and Marcus instinctively backed up, shouting for his friends. Within seconds, 2 of them came running. The stranger tried to push past them, but a struggle broke out in the hallway. The man shoved one of them into the wall before bolting for the front door. Everyone rushed after him, but by the time they got outside, he was gone, swallowed up in the crowd of other parties and fireworks in the distance. When they went back inside, they realized several things had been stuffed into the man's pockets before he was caught. Wallets, jewelry, even a set of car keys. He had been stealing from them while they were distracted with the celebration. Marcus later admitted what chilled him the most wasn't that they had been robbed, but that this stranger had been in their home for nearly an hour, watching, waiting, acting like he belonged. And on a night meant for new beginnings, he left behind a memory that Marcus says still makes him uneasy every New Year's Eve. The thought that the scariest guest of the night might be the one you never invited. The holidays are supposed to be a time of comfort, family, gifts, and memories. But these stories are proof that not everyone sees the season that way. For some, the holidays are the perfect cover to break into homes, to take advantage of distractions, and to ruin the sense of safety we take for granted. So while you're stringing up lights, leaving cookies out, or counting down to midnight, remember, there are people out there who see those moments as opportunities. Double-check the locks, stay alert, and don't ignore the feeling that something's wrong. Because as these stories show, the scariest part of the holidays isn't always what's outside in the cold night, it's who might already be inside. If you enjoyed these stories and want to hear more, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and share your own holiday safety tips or experiences in the comments below.